not everyone knows the story behind it.
Yeah.
And how this incredible waterway actually came to be.
It's quite the story, actually.
It is, and it's a story that really captures, I think, the human spirit of ambition, the drive to kind of, conquer nature and connect the world, and we're going to dive into that story today.
I'm excited.
So when we say connect the world, we mean literally carving a path through an entire continent.
Literally.
We're talking about this narrow strip of land in Panama,
Right.
separating the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. And for centuries, people dreamt of creating a shortcut so that ships wouldn't have to make that really long and dangerous journey all the way around the tip of South America.
Right. Yeah, it was a pretty treacherous journey back then.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So for our deep dive today, we're going to be using the Wikipedia article on the history of the Panama Canal as our guide. It's a really great place to start if you want to get the big picture.
Yeah, that's a good starting point.
And just a heads up, get ready for some wild stories about tropical diseases,
Oh, yeah.
political schemes, enough dynamite to make your head spin.
You said it.
So are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Okay, let's start by going back in time and meeting some of the early dreamers, the people who first imagined this crazy idea.
Okay.
Now, you might be surprised to hear that people were talking about a Panama Canal as far back as the 1500s.
Wow.
Even Charles V, like the Holy Roman Emperor, was intrigued by the idea.
Really?
Yeah, it was this idea that had been floating around for centuries.
I mean, it makes sense,
Yeah.
connecting the two oceans.
It's a big idea.
Yeah, and it would have been incredibly valuable
For sure.
at the time.
Yeah, I mean, think about, European powers were obsessed with finding faster routes
Right.
to the riches of the East Indies.
To the spices and the silks.
Exactly. Yeah, and China and all of that, and a canal across Panama would have been, a game changer.
Absolutely.
But it's one thing to dream about a canal,
Yeah.
and quite another to actually build it.
Right.
Yeah.
Much easier said than done.
Yeah, one early attempt was the Darien Scheme in 1698.
Oh.
This is when Scotland tried to establish a trade route across Panama.
It didn't go so well, did
It
it?
was a complete disaster.
I can imagine.
They were totally unprepared for the challenges of the jungle, the
Right.
diseases,
Mm-hmm.
the logistics of this massive, massive undertaking.
It's interesting, though, because it does highlight, I think, how complex these projects were.
Yes.
Even back then.
Yeah.
It wasn't just about,
Yeah.
digging a ditch,
Yeah.
You had to deal with disease, you had to deal with logistics,
Yeah.
you had to deal with politics.
Everything had to kind of
Everything had
Yeah.
to align perfectly for it to work.
yeah, it had to all work out.
Mm.
And this one definitely did not.
And for a while, it seemed like that dream of a Panama Canal was going to remain just that. A dream. just a dream.
Yeah, just a nice idea, but not anything realistic.
Right. Too many challenges.
Yeah. And then we have Alexander von Humboldt,
Oh, yes.
the superstar scientist of the 19th century.
The OG explorer.
Yeah, he explored the area,
Yeah.
but he made a pretty big miscalculation.
Oh, no.
Yeah, Humboldt, brilliant as he was,
Mm-hmm.
underestimated the technology available at the time
Oh.
and overestimated the height of the mountains in Panama.
So he thought it was a bigger challenge than
Yes.
it actually was.
Yeah, and his assessment actually put a damper on the canal idea for
Oh.
decades.
Wow. So one person's assessment really set things back.
It really did.
Wow.
Yeah, but then we have the California Gold Rush in 1848,
Oh, yeah.
and suddenly everybody wants to get from the East Coast to the West Coast
Yes.
as quickly as possible.
Gold fever. Everybody's trying to get there.
Yeah, and so Panama was back
Like in the spotlight.
in the spotlight.
Okay.
So this led to the construction of the Panama Railroad in 1855.
Okay.
Imagine thousands of workers hacking their way through the jungle,
Oh, yeah.
battling diseases, facing constant setbacks.
Yeah, it was a brutal undertaking.
Yeah.
Really expensive.
Expensive, it cost way more than they initially planned.
Oh, I bet.
But it did prove that a passage across Panama was physically possible.
So, a very early rough draft
Yes.
of the canal route, but with a heavy price tag.
Yeah, with a very heavy price tag. And that brings us to the late 1800s.
Okay.
To what we call the French fiasco.
Oh.
Enter Ferdinand de Lesseps, the hero of the Suez Canal.
Oh, wow.
Fresh off his success in Egypt,
Mm-hmm.
he basically said, "Hold my champagne, Panama is next."
The confidence.
Right.
the hubris.
It's beautiful, but
Right.
also a little bit dangerous.
Yeah, and a little foreshadowing maybe.
A little bit.
Ominous.
Yeah, his confidence was infectious.
Oh yeah.
Investors lined up to throw money at him.
I bet.
But de Lesseps made some critical errors, didn't he?
Oh, he did.
Yeah,
He really underestimated the challenges of Panama.
yeah.
He insisted on building a sea-level canal, just like the Suez,
Okay.
ignoring warnings from engineers who knew the area.
We're like, hey, this is not the same.
Yeah, like this is not going to work.
This is not going to work.
Different ball game here.
Yeah, yeah.
Different set of challenges.
The terrain was way more difficult with
Oh.
mountains, rivers, unstable soil.
Yeah, and then of course the disease,
Oh, the disease.
malaria, yellow fever,
Yes.
just ravaged the workforce.
It's devastating to think about.
It was awful.
Over 22,000 people
Wow.
died during the French construction phase.
That's a humanitarian catastrophe.
It is. It's a humanitarian catastrophe and a financial one, too.
Oh, of course.
The company went bankrupt.
Yeah,
Investors were ruined,
I bet.
and the whole project became this symbol of failure and corruption.
So the French dream was shattered,
Yeah.
leaving behind a half-finished canal
Right.
and just a legacy of despair.
So after this disastrous attempt, what happens next? Does everyone just give up on the Panama Canal?
Well, that's a great question, and that's where we'll have to leave it for today.
All right, so stay tuned for part 2, where we'll find out what happens next.
It's a real turning point in the story.
It is. It is.
So make sure you come back for that.
We'll see you then.
All right.
Bye.
Bye, yay.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the Panama Canal.
So last time we left off with the French kind of, throwing in the towel.
Yeah, they gave up
Yeah.
after a pretty devastating attempt to build the canal.
Thousands of lives lost a
Yeah.
lot of money down the drain.
Yeah, it seemed like maybe this was just like a cursed project.
Right. Yeah, maybe it wasn't meant to be.
Yeah.
But as they say,
Yeah.
where there's a will, there's a way.
Right.
And in this case, the will came from a new player on the scene.
A new player with some big stick energy.
I think that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, the United States
Yeah.
enters the game.
In the early 1900s,
Yeah.
with Teddy Roosevelt in the White House,
Yeah,
the U.S. decided they wanted to finish what the French had started.
they saw the canal as this key to American power
Right.
and global trade.
Makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense when you think about it, right?
Oh, yeah.
You have a shortcut between the Atlantic and Pacific
Yeah.
that gives the U.S. a huge advantage in terms of military strategy and commercial shipping.
Yeah, it would really change the game for them.
Completely.
Yeah.
But even with all their resources and ambition,
Mhm.
the Americans still face some pretty major hurdles.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, first of all, they had to decide where exactly to build the canal.
Right.
Initially, Nicaragua seemed like the best option.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, it had this large lake, Lake Nicaragua,
Yeah.
that could be incorporated into the canal system.
So you have a lake in the middle of the canal.
Yeah, sounds pretty convenient, right?
That's pretty straightforward, yeah.
But there were concerns about volcanic activity in Nicaragua.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a problem.
Yeah. And then there was this guy, William Nelson Cromwell.
Oh, yeah.
He was a very persuasive lobbyist
Okay.
who had a vested interest in the Panama route.
So we're talking behind the scenes maneuvering here.
A little bit of
A little intrigue.
intrigue, yes.
Okay.
So Cromwell was connected to the French company
Okay.
that still held the rights to the Panama project.
Okay.
And he very skillfully shifted attention back to Panama,
Mm.
emphasizing its shorter route,
Okay.
existing
That
infrastructure
makes sense.
from the French efforts,
Yeah.
and crucially, no active volcanoes.
Yeah. That's a good selling point.
Very good selling point.
Yeah.
So Panama was back on the table,
Back in the game.
but there was another problem.
Oh.
Panama was still part of Colombia at this time,
Okay.
and Colombia was driving a hard bargain.
Oh, boy.
They were demanding more money and control over the canal zone
Hmm.
than the U.S. was willing to give.
Okay.
And Roosevelt, known for his big stick diplomacy,
Right.
was not happy.
Big stick diplomacy. I like that.
Yeah, essentially it meant that Roosevelt believed in negotiating from a position of strength,
Okay.
and he wasn't afraid to use military force if necessary.
So the U.S. was really determined
Yeah,
to get this canal built
very determined.
one way or another.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is where things get a little controversial.
Oh, boy. Here we go.
The U.S. ended up supporting Panama's independence movement,
Oh, wow.
which led to Panama breaking away from Colombia in 1903.
Okay.
Now, this decision to support Panama's independence
Right.
is still debated by historians today.
It sounds pretty controversial.
Yeah, some argue that the U.S. was justified in intervening to
Mhm.
secure a strategic asset.
Right.
Others condemn it
Yeah.
as an act of imperialism.
Okay, so there's different perspectives.
Different perspectives.
on how that all went down.
Yeah, and it's a complex issue
Yeah.
with no easy answers.
It sounds like it.
So the U.S. gets their way,
Okay.
Panama becomes independent,
Yeah.
but now they actually have to build this canal.
Right.
And after
Yeah.
the French disaster,
Yeah.
I imagine everyone was a little bit nervous.
I would be like, how are we going to avoid
Yeah.
making the same mistake?
Yeah, they knew they couldn't afford to repeat the mistakes of the past,
Mhm.
so they brought in some of the best engineers
Okay.
and medical experts in the world
So they're taking this seriously.
very seriously.
Okay.
And one of the first heroes
Okay.
of the American effort
hmm
was a guy named John Frank Stevens.
John Frank Stevens.
He was the second chief engineer of the project.
All right.
Now, Stevens was a brilliant engineer
Okay.
and a logistical genius.
Mhm.
He recognized that before they could even think about digging a canal,
Right.
they needed to create a safe
Okay.
and functional working environment.
So he's thinking about the logistics,
Yeah.
the well-being of the workers.
Yeah, the workers, yeah.
Okay.
So he basically built a whole mini city in the middle of the jungle.
Oh wow.
He oversaw the construction of housing,
Mhm.
hospitals, railroads, sanitation systems.
Well, like a whole little society.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Everything needed to support this massive workforce,
Mhm.
but just as importantly,
Yeah.
he tackled the disease problem head on.
I was gonna say, what about the yellow fever,
Yeah.
the malaria?
Yeah, I mean, the French had lost thousands of workers to these diseases.
Right. Yeah, that was their downfall.
So how did Stevens and his team
Yeah,
overcome that challenge?
that's a good question.
Well, this is where William C. Gorgas,
Okay.
the chief sanitation officer, comes in.
All right.
He was a pioneer in understanding how mosquitoes spread diseases.
Oh wow. So this was new information back then.
It was groundbreaking stuff.
Okay.
Gorgas launched this massive campaign
Mm-hmm.
to eliminate mosquito breeding grounds.
Okay.
He drained swamps,
What?
fumigated buildings, sprayed insecticides.
So this was a truly revolutionary public health
A
effort.
revolutionary.
Okay.
And it worked.
It worked.
It worked.
Wow.
Yellow fever and malaria rates plummeted,
Incredible.
saving countless lives.
That's amazing how one person's understanding can have such a huge impact on
Yeah.
on a project like this.
Yeah, it's a testament to the power of science
Yeah.
and public health measures.
For sure.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been talking about the Panama Canal.
We've covered a lot of ground.
Yeah, from the early dreamers to the French fiasco to the U.S. stepping in and taking charge.
And overcoming some pretty incredible obstacles along the way.
Yeah, they really do. It's an amazing story of human ingenuity and perseverance. But as we kind of hinted at earlier, the story doesn't end there.
Yeah, building it was really just the beginning.
Just the beginning.
The real challenge, I think, was managing it,
Yeah.
controlling it, and that led to some pretty complicated and fascinating chapters in the canal's history.
Especially with the U.S. in control, right?
Yeah,
Right in the heart of Panama.
right.
I can imagine that wasn't always an easy arrangement.
Not at all. You see, while the canal was, this huge boon for global trade,
Yeah.
it also became a symbol of U.S. power and influence in the region.
And for Panama, it must have been a bit frustrating.
Yeah, to say the least.
Yeah.
Having this vital part of their territory controlled by a foreign power.
Yeah. You can understand how that would lead to some tension.
Oh, absolutely. And as Panama gained more autonomy and national identity over the years,
Mhm.
this issue became a major point of contention.
So how did that tension play out?
Well, for several decades, the U.S., maintained a pretty tight grip on the canal zone, treating it almost like an extension of American soil.
Oh, wow.
But this created a lot of resentment
Yeah.
among Panamanians
Yeah.
who, felt like they were being denied control over their own country.
Over their own destiny, yeah.
Exactly. And there were protests, demonstrations, even riots over the years with Panamanians demanding, more control over the canal and the surrounding zone.
It sounds like things were bound to come to a head at some point.
Oh, they did.
Yeah.
The 1964 Martyrs' Day riots were a a real turning point.
Okay, I've heard of those, but can you remind us what happened there?
Yeah, so these riots were sparked by disputes over the display of the American and Panamanian flags in the canal zone.
Okay.
But they quickly escalated into a major confrontation between Panamanians and U.S. forces.
So things got pretty violent.
They did. Dozens of people were killed and hundreds were injured.
Wow.
And these riots really shook the U.S. government. And they forced them to kind of rethink their whole position on the canal.
So it wasn't something they could just ignore anymore.
No, the world was changing,
Right.
and those old colonial ways were,
Yeah.
becoming unacceptable.
Yeah, so in the 1970s,
Mhm.
under President Jimmy Carter,
Yes.
the U.S. finally agreed to negotiate a new treaty with Panama.
This is where the Torrijos-Carter treaties come in.
Yes, I remember hearing about those, but I could definitely use a refresher.
Of course. So in a nutshell,
Yeah.
these treaties established a process for the gradual handover of the canal to Panama,
Okay.
culminating in full Panamanian control on December 31st, 1999.
Wow, that's a big deal.
It was a huge moment.
Yeah.
It really symbolized Panama's,
Yeah.
full sovereignty and control over their own territory.
I bet there were some people who weren't too thrilled about this,
Oh, yeah.
both in the U.S. and in Panama.
Absolutely.
So on the U.S. side, what were some of the concerns?
Well, some conservatives argued that Carter was basically giving away a
Yeah.
strategic asset
Yeah.
and weakening American influence.
Yeah.
Others worried that Panama wouldn't be able to properly manage the canal.
And what about in Panama? Were there concerns there too?
There were definitely some concerns,
Yeah.
mostly about the economic
Right.
and logistical challenges
Yeah, that makes sense.
of running such a complex operation. I
Hmm.
mean, it's not easy, right?
Well, not at all.
To just suddenly take over something as massive and complex as the Panama Canal.
Yeah, there must have been a lot of uncertainty on both sides.
There was a lot of anxiety,
Yeah.
a lot of people predicting disaster.
So how did it actually go?
Well, here's the thing.
Yeah.
The transition went remarkably smoothly.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Panama proved to be a very capable and responsible steward of the canal.
Okay.
They maintained its efficiency, and they've even expanded its capacity.
That's amazing. I mean, it just goes to show you that sometimes we underestimate
Mm-hmm.
the ability of a country
Yeah.
to step up and take charge of its own destiny.
It's a testament to the resilience and determination
Yeah.
of the Panamanian people.
Yeah, and today the Panama Canal is a symbol of their national pride and
Absolutely.
a vital engine of their economy.
Yeah, it's incredible to think about.
So from a wild dream
Mm-hmm.
to a French fiasco,
Yeah.
from American control
Mm-hmm.
to Panamanian stewardship,
Mm-hmm.
the Panama Canal has truly seen it all.
It really is a testament to human ingenuity,
Yeah.
perseverance,
Yeah.
and the constant evolution of our relationship with the world around us.
And it's not over yet, right?
No, not at all.
I mean, the Panama Canal is still facing new challenges today.
Oh yeah, climate change,
Yeah.
competition from other shipping routes.
Yeah, you have the Suez Canal,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And then the ever-increasing size of cargo ships.
That's a big one, yeah.
Yeah, so this vital waterway continues to play a crucial role in global trade.
Yeah,
And it'll undoubtedly continue to adapt and evolve
for sure.
in the years to come.
It's a story that's still being written.
It is. And I think it's safe to say we've all learned a lot about the Panama Canal today.
I think so.
What started as a seemingly simple request to explain this iconic waterway turned into this deep dive through history,
Yeah.
engineering,
Politics.
international relations.
Yeah. It's a fascinating story.
And it's a journey that we encourage all our listeners to continue on their own.
Yeah, go do some more digging.
Yeah, there's always more to discover
Absolutely.
about the Panama Canal, its impact on the world, and the people who made it all possible.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So keep exploring, keep learning, and keep asking those big questions.
Great advice.
Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.
Thanks, everyone.